Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I am reviewing The Fury of the Gods, Book 3 of the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. I did receive this lovely arc from the publisher. I also want to mention that this review will be spoiler-free. However, if you are someone who has read The Fury of the Gods and you want to hear people discuss it, I will be releasing a discussion of the entire Bloodsworn trilogy, but focusing mainly on The Fury of the Gods. This discussion will include the author himself, John Gwynne, as well as Ed and Will from the brothers Gwynne, who are the sons of John Gwynne, and Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, and Patrick Leo, and Sam from Sam Not So Wise, who actually speaks Icelandic, so he'll be very helpful in the discussion as well. We're going to be talking about everyone's non-spoiler assessment, why John Gwynne's works are special to us, but also we'll be diving deep into spoilers for The Fury of the Gods. So if that's what you're looking for, be on the lookout for that discussion to be released in a few days. But for now, here are my spoiler-free thoughts for those of you who are just looking for a quick review of The Fury of the Gods. I will begin by saying that Bloodsworn is, for me, the gold standard for action-oriented, Norse-inspired fantasy. And it is the Bloodsworn Saga, aptly named, in my opinion, because it does conjure the vibe of an Icelandic saga like no other fantasy I know. And for this alone, I love it. But I have other reasons for loving it too, because it also has what you would always expect from a John Gwynne book, namely a whole lot of heart. That is what I think of when I hear the name John Gwynne in fantasy. John Gwynne manages to instill so much heart into his stories. And this includes tears. Tears, the beautiful, happy tears, as well as the devastated tears of loss. John Gwynne gets you connected to those characters so beautifully, and he is not afraid to rip your heart out and stomp it all over it after throwing it on the floor. I mean, he will get you attached to those characters, and he is not afraid to do them in, and it hurts. But this is one of the reasons why we love John Gwynne's writing. There is also, in addition to this wonderful attachment to characters and the emotional ride that you always get, John Gwynne hallmarks include courage, wonderful portrayals of courage, an exploration even of courage, what it means to muster courage, and how one must feel fear in order to even know what courage is. And there is heroism in here, just great heroism, traditional fantasy style heroism, but also other kinds of heroism as well. And more nuance, I think, in this particular book and this trilogy, even in the previous work by John Gwynne. I'm going to get to that in a moment, though. Also, found family. Nobody does found family and animal companions like John Gwynne. In my opinion, he is the very best at these tropes, and they are in abundance in The Fury of the Gods, as well as in the Bloodsworn Saga. Just marvelous job with the found family and the idea that one can find one's identity, one's home with a group of people that started out as strangers. But we find ourselves in those people. We see our humanity reflected in them, and we learn to love. And that is such a beautiful journey that John Gwynne takes us on again and again in his writing, the learning to love with the found family. And the animal companions are very much part of that found family as well. Some very different animals in here, where John Gwynne is leaning on not just the Icelandic sagas and the Norse myth, but in addition to all that, there's some folklore stuff from Scandinavia in here as well that he uses to great effect in here for the animal companion parts. And also, I think that The Fury of the Gods, particularly, but the Bloodsworn trilogy in general, features some of John Gwynne's most nuanced characters. And I'm going to talk about that some more when we have the spoiler conversation. But I really feel that he is hitting new heights as an author. And I'm really excited to talk about this. But one of the key things here is that he gives his characters brilliantly, I think, inner conflict. There's some important characters in here who exhibit very real inner conflict that is directly related to some of the most important themes that he is exploring in The Fury of the Gods. I'm going to talk about that some more as well. I also would say that if you're familiar already with John Gwynne's books, and for example, you've read The Faithful and the Fallen, the Bloodsworn is a leaner story in many ways than The Faithful and the Fallen, in my opinion. It is perhaps not as grand or ambitious, but it is still incredibly epic, and it also is, in my opinion, deeper. And I'm going to talk about what I mean by that in a little bit. But you can see it even in the prose. I believe that John Gwynne has improved tremendously in his craft since the beginning. I'm a big fan of The Faithful and the Fallen, loved Malice from the beginning. But as I read through The Faithful and the Fallen, I could see, particularly in Ruin, there was a noticeable step up in the ability to use prose and in the craftsmanship going into the writing. And this just continues through his books. But for me, you just see in The Fury of the Gods something that I saw in a big way in The Hunger of the Gods. In the beginning, for me, the opening of The Hunger of the Gods is still the most sustained example of John Gwynne at his very best in terms of his prose. There's just some truly gorgeous writing in that opening sequence of The Hunger of the Gods. And you can see that writing throughout The Fury of the Gods as well. It is interspersed. There are just moments where I had to reread a sentence because I thought to myself, that is the best way anyone could have written that particular idea or event. Just some beautiful playing with words, getting creative. And I think that is also goes hand in hand with the fact that for me, Fury of the Gods is John Gwynne at his deepest, and this is really in regard to his exploration of themes. And this craftsmanship with his prose, I think, is what is allowing him, in some respects, to explore these themes so effectively. But he really digs deep in the Fury of the Gods, in my opinion, which really elevates this story. For me, it is the greatest story that John Gwynne has written so far, the Bloodsworn saga as a whole. And I loved The Fury of the Gods in particular. And let me explain why. When I talk about themes, a really important one to me personally, and I think something that John Gwynne effectively makes part of the story. He doesn't hit you over the head with these things ever, but he has made an effective part of the story in The Fury of the Gods. The idea of the other, with these people who are called the Tainted. It is not, I think, any kind of a spoiler to mention that these people are regarded as filthy, as animals, as other, as monstrous. And because of that societal view of them, they are treated as lesser, as deserving to be oppressed, and in fact enslaved. And this is a theme that it runs throughout the whole trilogy, the Bloodsworn saga, but I think where Gwynne really makes it so heartfelt and makes it so poignant is in The Fury of the Gods. And you really see where what he was building on in the prior books, in The Shadow of the Gods and Hunger of the Gods, really comes to a very important point in The Fury of the Gods, a boiling point even. So it's really well handled, this theme of othering and the idea of oppression and societal acceptance of treating people on the basis of some quality or other as lesser, and the unquestioning nature with which people embrace that kind of hatred and fear and anger, and they justify the atrocities that they commit against such people by asserting that they are less than human somehow, that they deserve it. And the difficulty of changing that kind of perception is just tremendous. We see it all the time in history and in society, and even today. It is very difficult to change people's minds once they have a stereotype, once they have a label that they have latched onto. So I just love what John Gwynne does with this in regard to the Tainted in The Fury of the Gods especially. And it is also something that he illustrates beautifully, that sometimes what it takes to change a person's mind about this kind of stereotype is knowing someone personally, is coming to understand that this is a human being here, not this label that we have assigned them, not some tainted, right? Which implies monstrosity and otherness. But no, this is a human being here who happens to be different from me in some respect. So I just love what John Gwynne does with this theme here. Another one that he hits on really hard in The Fury of the Gods in particular, but it also, again, was set up, I have to say, very well in the prior two books in this trilogy is the parent-child relationship. This is a theme that John Gwynne, as an author who really does a brilliant job of exploring familial relationships in general, but also as an individual who has, I think it's fairly well known that John Gwynne suffered a very tragic loss recently with the passing of his daughter. And you can see, in many ways, I think, by the way, that The Fear of the Gods is a triumph of the human spirit for that alone. But also with what he does with this parental-child relationship in The Fear of the Gods, it was just so beautiful to me. Perhaps the grief that he has learned to carry has also changed him as a person, even as a writer, perhaps. That is for him to say. But I certainly found that the several parent-child relationships in The Fury of the Gods were just so brilliantly handled, and that it is possible that grief has added real poignancy to his portrayal of these relationships in a way that I just find so compelling and so beautiful. And even if you want to separate the personal from the art, which is fine if that's your philosophy. Personally, I think you cannot entirely do that because these things are very much intertwined. An author's exploration of certain themes is informed by their own life experiences. That's just the reality. But even if you want to separate all of that, I still think you would find that there is tremendous power in the way that John Gwynne portrays the parent-child bonds here in The Fury of the Gods. And by the way, this is not always just biological parent-child either. There are, again, this is found family in here. This is there are adopted children in this. Quite a few examples, actually. And there's quite a spectrum as well in terms of the relationships. Not all of them are rosy. Not all of them are happy. There are some parent-child relationships in here that are fraught with the weight of familial trauma. There are thwarted expectations on the part of the parent or the child, and even hatred. You will see that as well in here. But some are also just breathtaking in the beauty of their sacrificial love. And that is really the heart of John Gwynne's storytelling to me, is sacrificial love, which is very much at the core of these found family relationships, of these beautiful families that you will find in John Gwynne's writing. It is the nature of love that we are willing to give for those that we love. We are willing to give the ultimate gift, in fact, for those that we love. And I just find it so beautiful. I find it so wonderful to read a story here that brought me to tears, actually, through its handling of these characters, the relationships, and the themes of what we give and what we get in a parent-child relationship, and the baggage that can entail, but also the love and the sense of belonging. There is just such great beauty to the way John Gwynne explores all of this. He gives us the full array of human experience here in The Fury of the Gods, and shows us what it means to be a parent or a child, and how these relationships give us meaning in our lives. So it was just a huge pleasure. You can hear I'm gushing with praise here for The Fury of the Gods, and it is for me the capstone here, the final book in a trilogy that is now my favorite thing that has been authored by John Gwynne, and I highly recommend that you check it out. If you've not read anything else by John Gwynne and you want to check out the Bloodsworn trilogy, you certainly can. It's a great place to start with his work, in my opinion. But yes, check it out, give it a try, see if it resonates with you, and that is it from me for now. Until next time.